Marvel's Avengers, a game that needs no introduction for all the wrong reasons. Since launch, it's been hemorrhaging goodwill, it's been hemorrhaging money, it's been hemorrhaging content, and their ability to ship that content on time. They've been hemorrhaging players, which is the most detrimental thing. A live service lives and dies by its player base. The player base is the lifeblood of any live service, and just a couple hundred players, that's just not enough. Matchmaking has been an issue, for example. This game is well on its way to dying off if Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics don't pull off some major reworks and overhauls for the way missions work, the way loot is distributed. But most detrimental of all is that this game just lacks content. You kind of breeze through it pretty quickly, and by the time you're done with the game, you're doing the same activities you've already done over and over and over again. And because the level design, the objectives are not compellingly designed, it's just really boring to actually repeat those activities. Now, we do see a boost of players right here. From an average of 440 players, we're seeing roughly 654 players in the last hour as of the recording of this video, and a 24-hour peak of 723 players. Well, that's because A, there's new content coming out on March 18th in the form of the HaDe DLC, and B, there is a deadline for players to level their characters to level 50 by March 18th, because come that day, as detailed in this blog post, they are reworking the XP so that it'll take longer for you to be able to level your characters up to 50 and unlock all of their moves, skills, and abilities, which is just an incredibly counterproductive move, given that Marvel's Avengers combat is the only thing about it that's kind of compelling. But they're making it harder to get to the more interesting stuff, despite this being a game that's hemorrhaging players because of how uninteresting it is. Their excuse is that they believe there are pacing issues with how leveling works, such as skill points currently being rewarded too fast, which nobody has complained about, may be confusing and overwhelming to newer players. And so what they've done is adjust the curve so that it would take about 3 to 5 more hours per character to reach their maximum total level of 50, and you multiply that by the myriad characters that are already in the game alongside the characters that are incoming. And well, we're talking about dozens of extra hours of grinding through the same repetitive, uncompelling, generic, just arduous, insufferable, and tedious content, just so we can maximize the combat mechanics of a game whose greatest asset right now is the combat mechanics. They're making it harder to actually make combat the most interesting it can be. What? Everyone was baffled by this, from major figures in the games industry like Jason Schreier to Greg Miller. Articles from numerous media outlets were baffled by this, noting that Marvel's Avengers kept fixing the wrong problems, or problems that never really needed fixing because they weren't a problem to begin with. And the community response has been equally overwhelmingly negative. Just go to the Marvel's Avengers subreddit or look at the responses to the tweet that links to the blog post detailing these changes. People posting all kinds of memes and comments, just not being able to believe that this is the direction that Marvel's Avengers would go in under the circumstances that it's in. So suffice to say that this game is in a pretty desperate situation where if it doesn't pull something mind-blowing pretty quickly, it's gonna die in the same way that Anthem did, in the same way that Artifact 2.0 did. But the developers at Crystal Dynamics are insisting that people shouldn't worry, that Marvel's Avengers is gonna see a great long-term future, and that we should expect this game to survive for a long time to come. I am extremely doubtful, obviously, about such a statement, such a declaration. So let's scroll down here and actually read the quote from the developers who took to a developer stream to showcase Hawkeye. And when somebody asked about, hey, I'm worried about the future of Marvel's Avengers, can we expect this game to stick around for a while? The statement that was provided, as quoted and transcribed by Multiplayer First, reads, "We understand, but rest assured we're committed to the future of Marvel's Avengers for years to come and have been working on a whole lot of things which we're excited to reveal. Looking forward to seeing you there in next gen." And apparently something else that was confirmed is that Crystal Dynamics is working on some kind of roadmap update for Marvel's Avengers. Obviously, the last roadmap that they had completely broke down, and now they're saying we're working on a new one, and It is true Marvel's Avengers is in desperate need of some kind of roadmap to give the community some kind of idea as to what efforts Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics are going through to bring this game back to life. But forgive me for not being particularly enthused by roadmaps anymore, given how many times those have fallen apart, given how many times roadmaps were unable to be upheld because of poor planning or issues that would lead to developers having to hold off on the roadmap so they can fix the game. Same thing happened with Anthem. There was an initial roadmap that fell apart because developers had to focus on fixing the game both from a technical standpoint and from a mechanics and system standpoint. And so that led them to not being able to focus on the content highlighted on the roadmap. So that was scrapped. Then they came up with a new roadmap, but turned out they couldn't even live up to that. That also fell apart. And I guess time will tell whether this roadmap that they're working on is something that Marvel's Avengers will be able to keep up with. But we're at a point right now where enough games have burned enough players with enough roadmaps that I would highly recommend not trusting in them 100%. Now, Square Enix did announce an event set for next week, and this is a tweet that highlights this. On March 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, they're going to host this event called Square Enix Presents, and one of the games featured in this presentation is Marvel's Avengers. I have a strong feeling that whatever they have to share about that game will not instill so much more confidence that people are going to flock back to the game, but who knows? Maybe they'll show some stuff that at least paints a more optimistic future, but I am not going to hold my breath on that. And as optimistic as the developers are trying to stay for the future of Marvel's Avengers, given what's happened before, given the past history of live services, I cannot advise that you trust in this positive sentiment, because let's go back to Anthem. This is yet another game that also went through the same phases that Marvel's Avengers did. A rough launch, followed by apologies, followed by roadmaps breaking down, followed by acknowledgments that they fucked up, that they'll make it up to the players, that the game did not meet the expectations of both the community and the company, only for them to cease communications, continue to fuck up with updates that make no sense. With Anthem, the way they handled loot and the way they ignored the community's feedback on loot was just baffling. With Marvel's Avengers, the way they're slowing down progression is completely baffling. And then this is followed up by assurances that the commitment is there, that there's a long-term future ahead, that they're working on these fantastic new updates. Well, let's look back at the history of Anthem, which launched back in February 2019. Just a couple months later, on June 20th, 2019, while they were being barraged by bad press, EA CEO stated that they're committed to Anthem. This is the specific quote that was provided in an interview with Game Daily. Andrew Wilson said this: IP lives for generations and runs in the 7 to 10 year cycles. Yes, even at this stage, in the state that Anthem was in, this guy was promoting a 7 to 10 year cycle. So if I think about Anthem on a 7 to 10 year cycle, boy, this aged like fine milk. It may not have had the start that many of us wanted, including our players. I feel like that team is really going to get there with something special and something great, because they've demonstrated that they can. Fast forward 2 years and we learned that only 30 developers were working on Anthem Next, and when they presented it to EA, they said, "Nah, we're good," and just scrapped it. It all goes to show that anytime a developer or a publisher starts touting how a troubled live service is just getting started, how the future is bright, do not trust it. Be optimistic if you want that ends up happening, but do not 100% trust this, because you're setting yourself up for disappointment. It's starting to feel like it's exactly what's happening with Marvel's Avengers. It's going through the same phases, the same pattern. I've been doing this long enough, I've been covering this stuff long enough that I'm able to recognize when a live service is headed off a cliff. We have just seen the same things happen to similar live services time and time again. Not to say Marvel's Avengers doesn't have a chance of a comeback, just saying it's looking highly unlikely based on recent developments, based on what we know so far. And June of 2019 wasn't the only time EA insisted that they're going to commit to Anthem for the long term. A little over a month earlier, on May of 2019, when EA was reflecting on Anthem and admitted that the game did not meet expectations, Blake Jorgensen, who is an executive at EA, said the following: "We continue to invest heavily in Anthem with developers working on game quality, content, systems, and game mechanics. It's great original IP, and we have doubled down on the product. We are committed to the live service for Anthem and delivering for our community in this new IP over the long term. We believe in the team at BioWare, and we also believe in what they set out to achieve with this game, building a new IP and melding genres to reach a new audience." I cannot help but just laugh reading this statement retrospectively. Fast forward to February 2021, and both EA and BioWare would be singing an entirely different tune, announcing that we have made the difficult decision to stop our new development work on Anthem, aka Anthem Next. And who's to say that the same thing won't happen to Marvel's Avengers? It's looking a lot more likely that Marvel's Avengers is headed down the same road Anthem did. I hope that doesn't end up happening. I hope there is a way for Marvel's Avengers to make a recovery with significant overhauls to game systems, mechanics, the way rewards are doled out, to the loot aspect of the game that this looter brawler just completely botched. You know, I would love to have in my hands a compelling AAA Avengers experience. I don't believe Marvel's Avengers can provide that with the current exoskeleton that it currently has. I just don't think on a conceptual level, on a foundation level, that it's set up to be a compelling long-term experience. But if they can prove me wrong, cool. So far, I just don't think that's going to be possible. And developers can guarantee all they want. They can say, rest assured, we're committed all they want. But we have seen these kinds of promises fall apart enough times that I don't trust it at all. Not to mention, it's not really even up to the developers. It's up to Square Enix. If one day they decide we're losing too much money off of this and this is just not worth it to commit long term, there's no way we're going to bring this back to life, and decide to kill this, well, the developers have no choice but to go along with Square Enix's decision, just like BioWare had no choice to go along with EA's decision. So do not believe in this kind of positivity. Not to say that I don't like positivity, but I hate it when game companies are giving false hope to people, when they're trying to string them along this journey that is going to wind up nowhere. And again, I'm not saying that's guaranteed for Marvel's Avengers. Just be careful with trusting promises like this too much. Hope for the best, but do expect the worst when a game is in such a rough state right now, when it's hemorrhaging players this badly, when the announcement of new characters just barely gets the player count up. But that is just one man's stance on everything surrounding Marvel's Avengers right now. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the developers' insistence that, you know, they're going to commit to this game long term, that there's a bright future ahead for Marvel's Avengers. Do you believe them? Do you think that's a possibility? Or have you given up on all future prospects for this title? Drop a comment, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.